Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of season 3. I am Kathy Goodall,
And I am Genesis Etienne.
and we are
Focus
Focused at
that
Party.
body. We're gonna get it right one day. Like we're gonna get it back in
Guys,
sync.
in the first season, we were in sync.
We were
Second
so good,
season,
right?
I don't
Oh
know
my
what
goodness.
happened.
We've come a long way, girl. It's all
So,
good.
if you're joining us for the first time, I am a marketing consultant. I'm a leadership and growth coach. And I am happy to be a part of the duo of Focus at 40.
And I am Genesis Etienne. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I am an agent of change, right? I'm a marriage and family therapist. We're podcasters, we're mommies, wives, right? Talk about change. And I am the other part of this dynamic duo. So I'm excited to be here for season 3. We are in such different places than we've been. So this is really fun to kind of explore this season together. And I am grateful that the audience is with us. Welcome.
So last week we talked about burnout and some of the things that cause burnout and some of the things that we can do to prevent burnout. And Jen and I were talking, and we realized that a lot of change has been happening in our lives. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that today.
I think that change happens really as a result of some type of burnout. And maybe we're burnt out and we don't even know it, right? We could be spiritually burnt out, right? I mean, we have to be able to get to a certain place of discomfort before new things happen, right? So I believe that, yeah, I think that we're all in different kind of stages because something had burnt away, at some point, and that's what's necessary. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So we're not talking about the burnout from the perspective of being tired like we did last week, but we're talking about when you get to a point where you know that it's the time of there's an expiration, and whether it's a season of something that you're going through, whether it's a relationship that this is it's time there, the time has expired and it's now time for something new. And I think we've all gotten to that point in many different areas of our lives where we know that something has to change and we're either afraid to do it or we don't know what change is going to look like. So either we're afraid of letting go of what we know, or we're afraid of what we don't know is going to happen.
Right. And I think that what's so funny though about, the trueness of change is that it's clearing brush, right? We may not be ready for the changes coming. It doesn't matter. Sometimes we are not going to ever be prepared for the changes that come regardless, because we can control, or we can think that we control so many parts of our lives, right? But at the end of the day, change is coming regardless, whether or not you're ready for it. So I think the best thing to do is to truly kind of like embrace it and look at it with curiosity and not with fear, because that's kind of always how at least I have experienced it.
Sometimes the change is what is preparing us for what's next.
Oh my God, but it's so hard. So hard, Kathy. It's so hard. I mean,
What
I think of the changes in my own life, thinking about the changes in your life. Do you think just like in the last year that you were ready for all the changes? You
no,
think?
no, and I certainly didn't see it coming. I mean, we COVID kind of like hit me like a brick, and it forced change for a lot of us. And then we became accustomed to a new normal, and then
Right.
the world opened up, and then that was like another hit of bricks because so many things changed during that time, and it's either
Right.
we were
Right.
able to adapt and thrive in that time, or we
We
were looking
weren't.
forward to the world opening back, but when it opened back, it still opened back in a different way. And then just so many things happened, in terms of climate, in terms of economy. There's just
Politics.
so many
Yeah.
things, politics, and things that affect us that we used to pretend that they didn't. And reality hit that everything that was happening in the world had an impact on us at that time.
Yeah.
So I mean, especially in the past year for me, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, 2098, 2099, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 20 I got married, I moved to a new city. Um,
Change.
I acquired so many new responsibilities. Um,
Right.
I left that environment or several environments that I was comfortable in, that I knew. But I also knew deep down that, it was time to release a lot of the old things, to be able to make room. We talked about breathing room in our last episode, but to make room for new things, to make room for better things. Um,
Definitely.
And I think that in the beginning it was hard because, of course, it's the
It's
same.
unfamiliar, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
on the other side of it now,
I know, and it was a physical move, it was a emotional move, it was a spiritual move. I mean, everybody that knows me knows I'm very close to my church, my pastor. It was a major part of my life, and
Of course.
it yeah, COVID kind of helped to make online happen in a more meaningful way, but it's still not the same. And
No,
then, going into a new environment, trying to even find a new church home for me is difficult, where I am. Work, I was thriving at one point in my field in Jamaica. Then I was transitioning into something new and getting clients in the States and in Jamaica. And then now moving all the way out west to being physically away from that.
right.
It's a lot of different changes. And we started Focused at 40. I used to see you way more. I used to see you almost every month. Now, it's not so much every month anymore.
Now we put some boundaries up around all that traveling, right, girl?
But for
Listen, good for
you,
you.
I mean, you've gone through some major life changes. And I mean, in the past year or two, or I would even say let's even say the last 6 months, there's been a lot of change happening in your life.
Oh, yeah, and I'll be honest. I think it takes a certain amount of maturity, right? A whole lot of faith, and a lot of courage to not crumble when
Yeah.
change doesn't look favorable, right? I mean, and I say it with so much, it's so funny because I laughed about it last night with my neighbors because I was doing so great for so long. And sometimes, it's been humbling. The last few months have been humbling because it teaches you that, what God can give, God can also take. And you know what? You know, when that happens, how do you handle that? How
Mhm.
do you handle that? Am I going to cry and stumble and fall? No, 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 no. I'm grateful for everything that is here, right? Pray for preparedness, make sure that whatever is next for me that I can handle that with grace, and know that again, kind of like changes have happened in the past and knowing that I've always survived every change that I've gone through in the past. And I have gone through, I always say that these 7-year cycles are these like rebirthing kind of like
Yeah.
times for people, and I'm at this 7-year cycle post divorce, 7-year cycle past my master's, and I'm at this place and I see transition happening again, and I think of all the riches that I've had, you know, from the last few years and with all of those changes. And those were hard, miserable changes. So can you imagine what great, beautiful changes feel like, And so that helps me to recalibrate, you
Mhm.
know, be patient and know that whatever is coming is for my best, right? Whether or not I know that,
Yeah,
whether or not,
um,
you know,
it's crazy because I think that so often, when we talk about fear is anticipation of what you don't know, right? It's you already conjuring up all of these things in your mind about what the outcome is. And
right.
once we actually do it, we realize that maybe it's not so bad after all. But one thing I do realize about change, and like you said, especially for us, because we are faithful, we believe that God has our best interest at heart at all times. But I think a lot of the time when he's transitioning us from one place to another place, he needs us to understand that he needs us to release the things that are holding us back. And it doesn't have to be bad things. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. There are people that come into our lives that are there, and they don't mean us any ill will or anything like that, but they're not growing enough to come into the next season with us.
To the next
And
season.
so we need to let them go. You know, I remember before I got married, or before I even met my husband, I had some friendships that were some people in my life that were really close to me, that, you know, their friendship was very important to me. But the nature of our friendship was
One-sided. It was one-sided.
I'm not, no, Jen, just in that season, it might have seemed that way. But the point is that I had to get to a place where I accepted that the role that I played in that person's life and the role that that person played in my life was not the same. And so there came a time where I emotionally had to release that. I mean, physically it was easy because we weren't in the same place, but emotionally I had to release that and accept that everybody's not my responsibility. And we're all grown-ups, you know, regardless of what that person is going through. I mean, you know, for disclosure, my friend was sick and going through like cancer treatments and stuff. And I was ready to like uproot my whole life to go and just like take care of them. And, you know, it got to a point where I was just like, okay, I realize this is not my responsibility and I need to release it. And so I had these relationships in my life that if I was in, you know, imagine if I left and I was taking care of him and my whole life became consumed up with him, then I wouldn't have made room to even be in a space to meet my husband, you know. And this is not somebody that I was in a romantic relationship with, but the point is that it could be something that's good or that is not bad in your life, but that season is just up. And until you're ready to release some of those things, you know, just like me holding on to being in Jamaica, being in Florida, being in Atlanta, being all of these places, until I was ready to be settled, I probably wouldn't have been open to receiving my husband either. And so it wouldn't have been the right time for me to meet him.
Oh my God, can I speak on all of that? Because you're
No.
damn right. So no, no. On the amazing parts of it, right? Because I think that you at least, you know, I think you were ready to be emotionally available. And as soon as that happened for you, and that is part of that burnout, right? That is your brush being cleared in order for you to be emotionally available. And once you were comfortable becoming emotionally available, look what came to you. You know what I mean? And so that right there goes to show about how important it is to clear that brush, you know, and to know that not only that, you know, I think that, and it's so funny because I love you so much and you're such a strong girl, you know what I mean? But I think that you put these, you know, you put up these guards, and then as soon as the guard comes down a little bit, all this beauty just like flies in. You know what I mean? Like you, maybe there was a part of you that being home and being settled was still like, oh my God, this is like home now.
Yeah.
You know, this is home, and for as long as you're flying around and stuff, you still have some of that. But you know what? It's deserving. You're deserving of this place, of this space, of this wonderfulness in your life. You're deserving of that. And once you say, I'm deserving, you want to be there. You know,
Yeah.
once you say, I want emotional availability, I am ready to be that for somebody else, it comes. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so uncomfortable to be on this side of the what if, but it's so freeing and so beautiful, and so
When you get to the other side.
it's amazing, you know. I mean, we're not meant to stay where we are, you know.
Yeah.
I remember me and you having this conversation about Steve Harvey saying, you know, about the damn car in his driveway, and how, you know, he would go to work every day and he would come home and he had this car on four bricks, right? And the car was not worth anything. And he was gonna move the car, and he was gonna move the car, and he was gonna move the car. And he ends up not being able to move the car because, I mean, getting a new car, because the whole
Exactly.
time he had this junky car sitting in his parking lot. You know what I mean? So you got to clear that, you know. But he loved that car. That car had been with him forever. That car was a part of his family. That car treated him so well. And it's kind of the same excuses why we resist, what is
We're
implicitly.
comfortable in this job. It's what I know. I know the people here. I know all
I've
the,
got benefits, you know,
yeah.
and yeah, I think that it takes a real courage, not so much to change, because change happens to people who are courageous and not courageous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But again, it's the grace with which you embrace that change, um you got to flow. You got to flow into it. That's hard though.
Yeah.
Flowing is hard for people.
Jen and I were talking about the fact that during COVID, a lot of people became entrepreneurial. And then when the real world came back, the world opened up and, interest rates went up for mortgage and like everything just started going up. Inflation was ridiculous. People are now trying to decide, well, do I stay or do I go back to a 9 to 5? And, it's like, there's this pressure of, oh, but I started my business and, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to be an entrepreneur. And, you feel this pressure. And, we were laughing about it because the reality is that, look, there ain't nobody living in your house but you. There is
Listen,
nobody living in your house but you. And there is nothing wrong with wanting a guaranteed paycheck, right? Now, I remember having a 9 to 5 and having my guaranteed paycheck with all of my benefits. And I was quite happy. I didn't have to worry about anything.
right. Yes, I understand.
But the point is that those decisions have to be made for you by you, not by anybody else. Because you'll have your friends that mean you well. They mean you well and they're like, no, you can do this. They push you, tell you, yes, you can be an entrepreneur. And nobody's telling you not to, and nobody's telling you not to focus on your business, but you still have to know what's right for you.
Of course,
Yeah.
and it's perfectly fine, right? The theme this season is staying put versus moving around, right? So if you decide that is what's comfortable for you, that is perfectly wonderful. You know what? There are people who I know who have worked and retired for companies for 57 and 60 years. And you know what? They never changed a thing in their life. You know what? There are people who don't need that, but maybe they need to change other things. Maybe their diet and exercise sucks. Maybe there's, their family relationships need change. Maybe, everybody, it's so funny because I know that we've talked so much about life inventory and we haven't done it on here. But there is a part of everybody's life that needs some form of change, some form of reform, and you can either not, or you can change those things.
I
That thing.
remember I started working for a company and I was heading a team. And so I had individual meetings with all of the team members. And two of them in particular, one had been at that company. That was her first job. And she'd been there for like 12 years or something ridiculous like that. But she started out young and she was young enough. I mean, she was still in like her early 30s. And you could tell that from her attitude and the way that she behaved, she didn't want to be there. And so I asked her, what do you want to do? And why have you even tried to look elsewhere? And she had never even tried to look anywhere else. And so, a lot of the time we stay in a situation where we feel like we're comfortable, but we are so miserable and unhappy. And the reality is that the more miserable and unhappy we are, is the worse of our work environment is going to be for us and other people. And so
Absolutely.
it's not that she didn't want to be in a 9 to 5. She just didn't want to be in the 9 to 5 that she had. And she was
Correct.
so afraid to look outside because that's the only place she had ever worked. And when we finished processing, because at the end of the day, whether you're an asset to me and my team, if you don't want to be there, then I don't want you there, right?
Absolutely not. Right. Let me release you to go find what you can do, better or better for you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same thing. So she eventually left. And same thing with one of her other co-workers. She went on vacation and I said to her, by the time you get back on vacation, I just needed to tell me, are you staying or are you going? Right. And she came back and she's like, I'm going. And now she has her own business. She started a
Good
vegan
for her.
makeup line and she's thriving. Right. So the outcomes are different. And so why are you laughing, Jen?
Because you know why? You're damn right. You know what? It doesn't work out all the time. You know what? Change is going to happen, and sometimes it's going to be amazing, and there's all this beauty. But sometimes it's going to happen, and you know what? It sucks. you know what? You still came out on top. Because guess what you won't do again? You won't put some
Exactly.
makeup, you know?
You would learn, you would have learned, right?
There, so a lesson came out of it, you know? Either way, you still took the leap, you
Yeah, but
know?
you know what? No, the thing is, sometimes when change happens in our life, it's to teach us something. It's not necessarily to take you to the other side immediately. It's to prune you and groom you to get you ready for what's to come.
Prepare, right? Prepare. It's so funny because you did this on your simple steps. You were talking about, being in the wilderness. We've kind of been talking about
Yeah.
this kind of moving into a different space, right? And what that looks like, right? And the turnabout ways that those things happen, right? That it doesn't happen in this linear space, It's so crazy because so being just candid, I lost this work contract yesterday and I was telling her about it. And I called my financial advisor and I'm like, we need to put stops on this because, all of a sudden everything's changed. And he had this conversation with me. He's like, listen to me, you don't move anything. What that's doing is growing something else over there. You can't think like that, right? The first thing that I'm used to is now let me, make sure that I have all my little eggies in my basket. And that is because I am afraid of, well, what if this, you know what I mean? And so I needed, first of all, kind of like what I said, even in these little snippets that we've been doing, let me consult with somebody who knows more than I do about what's happening right now. And he was able to put it all back into perspective to me, like, listen, what this is doing, the 3 grand you lost here is building over here. And so, but I'm afraid of that. I'm not savvy with that, And so, but again, if you are ready, it will come. I am convinced. If you're ready, it will come, and if you're not ready, it will come.
Yeah, but it's really about being open, it's really about being open and being honest with yourself about the areas of your life that you need to change. The reality is that change is inevitable in life, right? And how we embrace it determines how quickly we'll get to the other side of whatever it is that we are experiencing, right? So whether it is in our finances, because the truth is, a lot of the time we find ourselves getting overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, there's too many bills this month, or there's too much, or there's too much, or there's too much. But the reality is that we are the reason that we are feeling so overwhelmed by things like our finances or time, because we keep mismanaging our finances and mismanaging our time. And if
Right.
you really stop to think about, okay, let me look at my money in a meaningful way, like I have a budget sheet that tells you write how much money you make and how you spend your money, and when you're overspending, everything just turns red.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see what's in the green and what's in the red, and you
Right.
can make adjustments to what's in the red. So if it is that I am eating out too much or whatever the case is, you know what I mean? Those are things that you can make changes to, so that
Correct.
you can feel better about yourself, that you're
Yeah.
giving and it's like, if I'm spending $3,000 a month on eating out, for argument's sake, that's $3,000 that I could be investing,
Correct.
that will be growing and won't be a liability. It will become an
Right.
asset,
No, girl, it's just about embracing it. It's about embracing it, and diving in and being courageous with yourself and having confidence to know that this is going to happen anyways, right? Or it's not going to
Yesterday,
happen if something doesn't change. So,
just yesterday I was talking to one of my girlfriends, and she was saying to me that she feels like she's not in the right place, and she feels like she needs to leave Jamaica. And I'm like, okay, so put it out there, say I'm ready to leave, but don't limit yourself to going to Florida or going to New York or going to the places that you're accustomed to. Look at where I am. I'm in Colorado.
right.
Right? No, never would. You couldn't have told me even a year ago that I was going to live in anywhere cold or live anywhere that's far away from the people that I know and love. But it has brought so much peace. It has brought so much clarity. It has allowed me to be less busy and more productive.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? You've got some clarity, you've got some support, and
But
you've got all of these wonderful things. You know what I
But
mean?
I
Like,
could have come here and I could have been like, oh, I'm so far away from everybody and it's so cold and I don't want to do anything and I don't want to talk to anybody and I'm so depressed and I want to go back to what I know. Or I could embrace it and say, oh, this is a great opportunity to focus on the things that matter to me, right?
absolutely.
So our
So we're
mindset,
embracing it, child. We're embracing it this season. We're embracing it.
our mindset around how we embrace change matters.
Absolutely. And your self-talk about it, your self-talk about it. What do you really think you can and cannot do? And those things are going to inhibit you or they are going to thrust you forward. You know what I mean?
Listen,
So,
yesterday after Genesis came home upset about losing her contract, she was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go and just decompress and chill. I'm going to go and sit down outside by the pool. And this morning she calls me and she's like, I got a new contract today.
I'm not going to lose it. I'm not going to lose it. I'm not going to lose it. You know what? Worse things have happened. So you know what? God's not going to close the door without opening another one. It might not happen right away. It doesn't always happen like that, but I'm grateful it did happen like that.
Yeah, and an important thing I think that we should ask ourselves anytime we're faced with change is what happens if we don't?
Correct.
What's the risk of staying in the same place? What
It's
am I
that,
going to be missing out on? What am I going to be losing if I don't take this next step?
yep. No, guys, I think it's super important and it's important. You know what? What are some of the things that you guys are afraid to change in your own lives? What are some of the steps that you would take? What kind of moves, if you could just jump and make a move, what kind of things? Even if it's not something that you're ready to do, it's something that you can start thinking about. It's still something. I dare you to have a dream and think about what that dream would look like, And then a dream is just, a goal without steps. That's all that a dream is, So put some steps behind it, and if you're not ready to put some steps behind it, at least put some thought behind it. And that's my thought on it.
Yeah, and some of you can share some of the changes that you've made in your life that have
Definitely.
worked out for you, that have been more beneficial, or that you've learned from,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, guys, share. We're so excited. I'm so glad that we were able to have this conversation today. And let us know what kind of changes. Let us know what you're afraid of. What are you guys afraid of? I want to know. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. All right, my
Well,
darling.
that's our time. Bye, everybody. See you again next week. Thanks for joining.
Bye, guys.